told that there's a homeless problem in Colorado. Did y'all know
brother.
that?
You mind video?
Did y'all know that there are more than 11,000 Coloradoans without a home?
Get out of here.
Did y'all happen to know that there were more empty high-rise apartments in Denver than there are homeless folks in the entire state? I'm gonna let Darren O'Connor tell y'all a little bit more about that. Darren?
Thank you, Michelle. Thank you, everyone, for being out here today. I'm always very happy to get to talk about this issue. It is an issue that our leadership would like to have you not know about. They'd like to sweep homelessness out of the public purview so that we don't have to pay attention to it. Yeah, there we go. Right. So let's talk a little bit about homelessness by the numbers. We have, by HUD's count, they do this point-in-time count every year, over 500,000 people, and this is a gross undercount. But the reason that it's at about 500,000 is that in around 1983, HUD funding under Reagan dropped from about $85 billion a year to roughly $15 billion a year. And what went with that is that we got rid of public housing. We lost 500,000 units of public housing, and now we have roughly 500,000 homeless people in this country. Again, an undercount, but it's amazing, isn't it, how closely and tightly those two numbers track.
That's right.
Right. So let's talk about what HUD does now instead. Instead, we have this Section 8 voucher program. The Section 8 voucher program, we opened in Denver, for example, 300 vouchers that could be used to get rental units. 300. Within 24 hours of the 2017 lottery opening, we had 21,500 people apply. Of those 300 vouchers, people were able to use 150 of them because landlords don't want to rent to people who are poor and coming to them with a Section 8 voucher. So 21,500 people sought help and only 150 got anything. That is the norm right now. We are grossly under-resourced, and we're grossly, our biggest lack of resource is heart and caring for our neighbors. We have this huge gap between the wealthy and the poor. That's why we're all here today. It creates so many problems, but the most basic one is being able to afford housing. The number one reason people are unhoused is because they can't afford rent or they've lost their job. And then once you've lost your job, you start getting criminalized. You end up in jail for sleeping in Boulder County. Since 1988, we've had a law on the books that says you can't camp. And how do they define camping? Using anything except the clothing on your back to cover yourself overnight. So if you are in Boulder and it's snowing and you can't get into a shelter and you're outside and you use a blanket, you're a criminal. And so how do you get yourself into housing once you have a criminal record? How do you get a job once you have a criminal record? When your only crime was protecting yourself from the elements. So I do want to talk specifically about Boulder for a minute and say that we have a new program called Coordinated Entry. It's lethal, this program. It requires people to go through a process, get counted, get qualified, get figured out whether they are disabled enough, whether they're at risk enough to deserve housing. 70% of the people who have been allowed into the program are disabled. 70%. And yet, we require these folks to go through these programs, and they get something like a 5% success rate placing them. But when we ask what success is, the answer gets a little worrisome. One of the successful planned exits, that's their terminology on the Boulder single homeless adult dashboard. A planned exit is we give them a bus ticket out of the state and we send them maybe back to a place where they'll find loving support, but also maybe back to their abuser, maybe back to a situation of domestic violence. We don't know, because once these people are gone, they're gone in terms of us paying any attention. We call it a success, and we have no idea what's happening. I know that some of these people are ending back up on the street, but it's somebody else's problem. That seems to be the policy across the country. It's the policy in Denver, it's the policy in Boulder, it's somebody else's problem. Now that's not to say we're not trying some, but when 5% is your success rate, the claimed success rate, that's not success by my book. And not following up, that's not success either. That's making it easy to report good deeds when you have no proof that they've been done. So I've talked earlier about the camping ban. In Boulder, if you're homeless, you are almost 600 times more likely to get a camping citation. And you're certainly more likely to end up in jail for a failure to appear warrant because you're busy getting food or dealing with some other basic act of survival instead of going to court. All right? So you're almost 600 times more likely to get a camping ticket. I wonder if you could guess how much more likely you are to get a smoking ticket if you're homeless. I mean, I've walked down Pearl Street Mall and taken photos of lots of people smoking, and they don't get these tickets. Guess who gets them? At a 300-to-1 ratio, our homeless neighbors, they're the ones who get these tickets. Just this last week, an Officer Lord, who I videoed giving out one of these warning about someone who was about to smoke, who dared to be homeless and have an unlit cigarette in his hand. Officer Lord, years ago, on my video, said that homeless people are welcome to leave the city, they can leave the state, they can leave the country if they want. And he told me that he kind of comes down to that area where unhoused neighbors hang out because the city manager tells him to. Well, this week, in response to a call for a community oversight board to review the police, Officer Lord showed his true colors and revealed a little bit more truth about the kind of direction that he gets. Once again, he called out the city manager for telling the police, and these are his words, to go enforce an unconstitutional smoking law. Unconstitutional because they make him go discriminate against homeless people. They make him go discriminate against homeless people. Unfortunately, like, I might feel a little bit of warmth towards Officer Lord if he didn't finish his message by saying, if we don't behave like this, if we don't, he was calling for stricter enforcement, stricter, longer sentencing for people who are homeless. Officer Lord said if we don't do that, we're going to end up like Seattle and Portland, which he called cesspools due to the homeless population. That's how our officers view our homeless population. I could go on and on. I don't want to lose your attention and bore you, because this is not a boring issue. It's every day it keeps me engaged. But I want to talk for a moment about sundown and ugly laws. Have you ever heard of these laws? The sundown laws were laws that said black people had to leave town by the time the sun went down. But we don't have that law anymore because obviously that's not okay, right? But it took a while. It took our nation way too long to get rid of that law. But right now what we have is a camping ban, which is no different. It tells our homeless population, which is far more diverse in terms of race and ethnicity compared to the rest of our population. We tell those people when the sun goes down, you either walk all night in perpetual motion or you're a criminal. So we still have sundown laws, we're discriminating against a new group. I witnessed this yesterday at the Boulder band shell. 2 officers gave a guy a trespassing ticket for sitting down at the Boulder band shell. Sitting down, trespassing. I videoed it. They know me. They said, "Hi, Mr. O'Connor, how you doing?" and walked off. Another friend of mine, formerly homeless, he's black and disabled. He witnessed some people being harassed for supposedly littering. They had their life's belongings at their feet, and the cops were going to give them a ticket for littering. All he wanted to do was video. He was about 15, 20 feet away from the video that I saw. They told him this man is disabled and African American. They told him to put his walking stick down. He said, "I'm a disabled man. I need this because I'm disabled. I need this." And they said, "Put down the weapon." He said, "It's not a weapon. It's my walking stick. I'm disabled." And then they arrested him. I have videoed the police in Boulder probably a dozen times or more. I've been in their face, but I mostly stand back and keep my mouth shut and let them show what kind of behavior and attitudes they have, like Officer Lord, who calls Seattle a cesspool because of homeless people there. I mostly am quiet and stand back. Sammy yesterday was mostly quiet and stood back and told them I'm a disabled man, and they arrested him. The difference is Sammy's black. The difference is Sammy's poor, probably, and the difference is Sammy is disabled, and they didn't think anyone was watching Sammy. How many of us are watching out for Sammy in the Poor People's Campaign? Hells yeah. This is for Sammy, and I want to end on a couple of quotes. One's from the Bible. "For the poor will never cease from the land, therefore I command you, saying, you shall open your hand wide to your brother, to your poor, and your needy in your land." It's a call to all of us to love our neighbor. It's the golden rule. It's very simple. But this law has made it also to the Supreme Court of this nation, where Justice Stevens has said, "The Constitution provides the right to enter one state and leave another, the right to be treated as a welcome visitor rather than a hostile stranger." Our homeless community are welcome visitors as far as I'm concerned. I love that the Poor People's Campaign is concerned about this issue and is sharing the love for our homeless brothers and sisters. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Oh, great job.